Today's podcast is sponsored by AMAC. That's the Association of Mature American Citizens. There is strength in numbers, folks. Join today at amac.us/Carter. I'm really excited because California Representative Mike Garcia joined me while I was in Canada to talk about some of the biggest national security threats facing our nation. I'm going to have him on the show today. You are not going to want to miss this exclusive interview. Garcia and I worked together on multiple different projects, Afghanistan being one of them, and getting American citizens out, as well as, remember the marijuana story, that big marijuana story that we busted in California with all those marijuana grows, where, okay, marijuana, everybody says, well, what's a big deal about marijuana? Well, guess what? Chinese cartels, Russian cartels, Mexican cartels, Armenian cartels, they were all taking people's property, basically putting their own marijuana grows on these properties with armed gunmen. And by the way, people that they brought across the border that they were using as slaves on these properties, and a few of them died. They actually found their bodies out in the desert, people that they brought in, and they were like siphoning off water off of the farmers' land. They were literally taking American water. They didn't pay for anything. And then what were they doing with the money? Well, according to the detectives that were looking into this, they were moving that money overseas, some of them actually to fund wars overseas, right? So I want you to think about this in the bigger context of what happened there, why Congressman Mike Garcia made such a big splash, why it basically forced the hand of California to do something about this. And Sheriff Villanueva was a hero in this. He was really being strong-armed, actually, by the Los Angeles Board of Supervisors that were basically not allowing him to do his job. But he just said, move out of my way. I'm taking these people down. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about so much more, from China threatening Taiwan to Russia massing troops on the border with Ukraine to the many problems at our own southern border, which I just touched on a few. Please follow and subscribe. Get all the links at saracarter.com. That is saracarter.com. And while you are there, sign up for your email, for our free email list, so that you do not get shadow banned, folks. The last thing we want to do is to lose contact with you. It's important now more than ever that as Americans, as Canadians, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that I feel like I have a Canadian family. The truckers, thank you so much for being so open and kind with me. Thank you so much for everything that you did to make me feel welcome in Canada. You are wonderful people. You are good people. And shame on the media, a lying media that now exists in both of our nations that have tried to, I guess we could call it the Hillary Clinton Deplorables Act, right? Nobody believes it anymore. Nobody believes it anymore. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that on the show too. But before I get to that, right now, you can get amazing discounts. Amazing. When you go to mypillow.com. I want you to click on my listeners page, and I want you to enter the promo code Carter, that's CARTER. There are over 20 deals for you to choose from, including, listen to this, My Pillows as low as $19.98, slippers at 50% off. Yeah, you heard me right. My Pillow towel sets at their lowest price ever for only $39.99, and 60% off any Giza Dream Sheets. I love them. I told you I have them all over my house. They are the best sheets you can sleep in, with a price of as low, listen to this, as $39.99. You cannot beat that. I'm telling you right now. 60% off any Giza Dream Sheets with a price as low as $39.99. And you get a free copy of, guess whose? My friend, your friend, American Patriot Mike Lindell's book with the promo code Carter. You will find all these offers and more at mypillow.com. Click on the radio listener square and use the promo code Carter at checkout, or call 800-685-7221. Right now, every order using promo code Carter will receive Mike's new book. You do not want to miss this. His book, What Are the Odds? From Crack Addict to CEO. Free. You'll get that book free. What are the odds? From Crack Addict to CEO. MyPillow.com, promo code Carter, or call 1-800-685-7221. Don't forget, use the promo code Carter for your free book. So I'm sure you have all heard it is a day to celebrate, guys, because John Durham's findings are detailed in a new report that came out this past weekend. And it basically exposes the extent to which President Trump, 45, was spied on. And I want to tell you, this was a story that John Solomon and I first broke on Sean Hannity in 2017 when we exposed the fraud behind these pings, these server pings that were supposed to prove that Donald Trump and his corporation were in communication with Alpha Bank being this Russian bank in Moscow, and that somehow they were talking to one another. John and I both had sources within Alpha Bank eventually and here in the United States that exposed the fraud for what it is. Now, we can only go so far because we only had a certain amount of resources, just like anyone else. You know, we're not the United States government. We don't have deep pockets that never end. We are not a special counsel. But we were able to get enough evidence out. I mean, you could go look it up. John Solomon, Sarah Carter, Sean Hannity. We talked about it on a show. We wrote about it when it was formerly Circa News. It doesn't exist right now. It was with Sinclair News Group. And we talked about it on Sinclair News Group, which of course does exist, one of the largest news organizations in the United States, television news organizations. And we exposed the fraud. But we knew it would take something like a John Durham, a Department of Justice, to expose what was really happening inside the United States during that time. And I was terrified. I got to tell you, John, too. I mean, there were times where, look, not only was President Trump spied on, we didn't realize the extent of all of the spying, but we knew that we were being watched. We knew that. I mean, some of that stuff already came out. You know, the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch, and spying on all of our social media apparatus. Me, Sean, Laura Ingraham, Sebastian Gorka, I can name others, Dan Bongino. There were a litany of us. And that was just open spying, using, by the way, State Department resources, which is illegal, to track us and what we were writing about. Because at that time, John and I were, at that time looking at Ukraine. This was after the Alpha Bank situation. These filings that John Durham submitted to the courts, these reports, they're based on the September indictment of Michael Sussman. Michael Sussman is a lawyer, one of the most powerful lawyers in Washington, D.C. He represented the Hillary Clinton campaign when he worked for Perkins Coie law firm. And I'm sure you remember all that. We broke a lot of stories on Perkins Coie. Mr. Sussman was basically accused of lying to the FBI. He lied to the FBI at a September 2006 meeting. He said he had these documents that claimed to show there was this secret internet communication between the Trump organization and the Russia-based Alpha Bank. I'm going to tell you what Russia-based Alpha Bank said. They said, go ahead, send a team to investigate because this is what we found in our investigation. Somebody has infiltrated our system and is creating these really weird pings. Even when the FBI went to look at the server, when the FBI went to New York, yes, because of Sussman going to them and saying, hey guys, you better listen. I think Trump's talking to the Russians. President Trump had no idea. He's not talking to the Russians. If President Trump's talking to the Russians, it's to buy some property. I'm telling you. He's not talking to the Russians about anything else. Right? But they wanted to make it seem that President Trump was the Manchurian candidate. Why? Because all of these people, who, by the way, were working for Hillary Clinton, because she paid for all this with the DNC, because the DNC was also represented by Perkins Coie law firm. And remember, we found out in the end that it was Hillary Clinton's money, which, by the way, her campaign never declared, that went to pay Fusion GPS. Remember? That security group that was a private, kind of detective with the guy who used to work for the Wall Street Journal. I mean, this is like all convoluted crap, right? Paid them to hire Christopher Steele, a British spy. A British spy, a foreign spy, former, but not really, former spy, to basically collect a dossier on President Trump, trying to show what? That he was a Manchurian candidate. So you've got Christopher Steele, a foreign spy, being hired by who? By who? A presidential candidate, Hillary Clinton and her team and the DNC, funneling money to Perkins Coie, who is doing what? Who is trying to set up President Trump, trying to set him up by going to the FBI and saying, hey guys, did you hear? I got some information that says these two computer servers are pinging each other and they're talking to each other. I'm just a really good human being. I'm just a good citizen who wants to disclose that this happened. What he didn't disclose was that he had ties to the Clinton campaign. That's what he didn't disclose. He was a liar. He was setting up President Trump. He was playing the entire country. Playing every single one of you. Every single one of us. Me and you together. And all those people at the MSDNC, yeah, Rachel Maddow, she was the useful idiot, right? Rachel Maddow, Chris Cuomo, all of the Trump haters, they were the useful idiots. Just like the New York Times, just like the Washington Post, because they hated Trump so much, because they're such elitist snobs that have been partying really hard in Washington, D.C. with John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, getting all their stories handed to them on a little silver platter so that they could look like they're the big cheese, right? They don't want to go out and do the work. They don't want to have to investigate. They want the government to hand them the stories. How sick is that? So that they can publish it, so that they can line their pockets with advertising dollars looking like they're the big cheese. They're just the useful idiots, guys. That's all they are. They're useful idiots. So they line their pockets up with all the advertising dollars and they push propaganda to you so that they can still party in Washington, D.C. with all of their friends. Go to the, White House Christmas party. Hey, I hung out with Obama. It was awesome. Hey, guess what? I saw, Biden's daughter. It was awesome. Probably wrote about me in her diary. Hey, guess what? Hunter Biden was smoking a crack pipe. It was fun. That's all these guys do. That's what they do. That's their thing, right? That's their thing. Well, we weren't doing that. I mean, I was getting approached by, I don't even want to tell you how many sources, people that were very, very credible. People that, by the way, on background and probably will never come forward, spoke to people up on Capitol Hill. Right? People like Devin Nunes, who was an honorable, amazing lawmaker, well, now former lawmaker, going to head President Trump's social media, but he did his job. He took so much shit for everything that he did to stand up for truth. Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, I can go on and on and on. All of these lawmakers that were just like, holy, what is going on here? What is happening? And then sources coming out of the FBI, sources coming out of the intelligence community. I can tell you this. I still have stories to write. That's how much information was out there. There's a big story that I'm going to write, actually, coming out very soon. And I think Sebastian Gorka knows about it. And I, it's been very difficult because there have been a lot of people that have come after all of us. And it was very hard. Andy McCabe, number 2 at the FBI. Boy, that guy didn't like me at all. He was trying to figure out how John and I knew all about this. How could we? We were like, I was actually, want to hear a little fun insider stuff? I was talking to John Solomon last night. Yeah, we talk once in a while. And we were sitting there talking, and I said, you know what, John? The only thing they didn't count on was what I call black swan events, what anybody in the national security community would call a black swan event. That's when something comes out of left field that you don't expect, right? That you don't expect. I think John Solomon and I were the black swan event. I mean, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, former head of the CIA, James Clapper, former head of the DNI, by the way, he lied in front of Congress multiple times, never paid any price for that. Poor Roger Stone, he gets like Roger Stoned, right? That's like now an adjective. He gets Roger Stoned, armadas surrounding his house. Oh, hey, CNN, this is the FBI. Guess what? We're going to Roger Stone. We're going to go get Roger Stone. You want to come wait so you could show the world? But more importantly, we're going to use you useful idiots, to scare everybody around President Trump. right? Think about it. We have become, or we were, maybe we are, but we're going to get out of it, a banana republic. We're not a banana republic, Hillary Clinton. We are not the deplorable. Hillary Clinton is the deplorable. She stomped all over our Constitution. She stomped all over our Bill of Rights. She stomped all over our right to privacy. Because you want to know why, guys? Because her and her husband built up a powerhouse bureaucracy that felt unstoppable. She had her own kingdom. There's nothing surprising about this. Nothing. You want to know why? Because in history, we've seen it. I mean, I hate to compare it to Caligula because that's kind of crazy. Because that was like, you guys know about that Roman guy. If you don't, look it up. But this is about power and greed and money and just becoming so obsessed with it that you build these massive walls, these armies inside the bureaucracy to defend you because you're not going to lose your power. And then it's even worse when the media becomes the useful idiot. When the media says, hey, okay, I'm going to get all my information from you and I'm not even going to question it. I'm not even going to question it. Let's go back to that indictment really quick before I move on. The indictment revealed basically that Sussman was working with this guy called Tech Executive Number 1. He's been identified as this guy named Rodney Joffe. I hope I'm not pronouncing his name incorrectly, but if I am, who the fuck cares? Excuse my language. He was formerly of New Star Inc. The indictment says that Mr. Joffe used his companies as well as his researchers, and I'm reading this little part from the Wall Street Journal, at a U.S. university to access internet data. By the way, Rodney, we contacted these people at this university about their contacts into this internet data. John Solomon and I did. That's how we broke the story. We were like, hey, how'd you get your stuff? What's going on here? It was quite surprising when they figured out that we knew what they were up to. It was pretty funny on our part. We couldn't, 100% prove it, but we could show where they were coming from and we were able to walk right up to the edge. So I think people got it. The indictment says Mr. Joffe used his companies as well as researchers at U.S. University to access the internet data, which he used to gather the information about Mr. Trump's communications. Durham said that Mr. Joffe's goal was to create an inference and narrative, which is what we said in 2017, that Trump would please certain VIPs, referring to individuals at Perkins Coie. The shocker relates to the data Mr. Joffe and his friends were mining. According to Friday's filing, as early as July 2016, Mr. Joffe was exploiting his access to non-public and or proprietary internet data, including internet traffic pertaining to the executive office of the President of the United States. Guys, think about that. They spied on President Trump. The filing explains that Mr. Joffe's employer had come to access and maintain dedicated servers for the executive office of the president as part of a sensitive arrangement whereby it provided internet services to the White House. How nice, how convenient. Mr. Joffe's team was also monitoring internet traffic related to Trump Tower and Mr. Trump's apartment on Central Park West. Guys, that's terrifying. That's terrifying. So we basically had, and I'm gonna continue to talk to you about this, all of the upcoming episodes, because I think we really need to peel, like Sean Hannity, my good friend Sean Hannity always says, peel back the layers of this onion so that you fully comprehend what has happened here in our nation. And I am so glad, and I'm grateful to God, actually, because I feel like we stumbled on it for exposing this and not allowing, look, I don't know, is Hillary going to pay? I don't know. Is she going to pay for this? I don't know. But I'm telling you this, people are going to pay, and the history books are going to ensure that at least they are exposed forever as one of the greatest and most dangerous modern political crisis in American history. I truly believe that. If this would not have been exposed, we could have lost our country. You guys, we are still on the edge here. This is a very young experiment, a very awesome and beautiful, precious, precious nation. And we have to be willing to expose the bad guys. We have to be not afraid to stand up for what's truth. And we got to do what's right. And we got to do what's right. Okay, before I get to Garcia, I want to play this really quick. It's Biden's very weak and incompetent answer on the Afghanistan debacle. Basically, Biden is calling his military brass liars. This is unbelievable, for saying that he didn't want to believe the warnings of a quick collapse. This president has got to resign. Listen to this.
Does any of that ring true to you?
No. That's not what I was told.
That you were told that the U.S. administration officials were prepared, they knew it was time to get out?
No, what I was told, no one told me that. Look, there was no good time to get out. But if we had not gotten out, they acknowledged that we would have had to put a hell of a lot more troops back in. It wasn't just 2,000, 4,000. We would have to significantly increase the number of troops, and we were back in this war of attrition. And there was no way we were ever going to unite Ukraine. I mean, excuse me, Iraq, Afghanistan. No way that was going to happen. And so this is a much wiser thing to do.
I just want to clarify, are you rejecting the conclusions or the accounts that are in this Army report?
Yes, I am.
So they're not true?
I'm rejecting them.
So right before we get to Garcia, I want to tell you guys about how cold it was in Canada. It was so cold. It was so cold. I was shaking every 5 seconds. But when I put on my heat warmers and those heat holders, I had nothing to worry about, guys. If there's a chill in the air, you want to keep yourself warm this winter with heat holders. Heat holders makes the warmest thermal socks around. They keep your feet warmer than just ordinary socks. I'm telling you, I was wearing these socks. They were amazing. In the coldest conditions, how do they do it? Heat holders uses a 3-stage process with cashmere-like advanced insulating yarn that's soft to the touch and brushed on the inside and traps warm air closer to your skin. It keeps your feet warmer, comfortable and dry. And what heat holder says it does, it makes the softest and most comfortable socks. Listen to this. Guaranteed. I'm telling you. Heat holders will pamper your feet. Heat holders also makes hats, gloves, throws, scarves, and so much more. Go to heatholders.com and enter the code Sara and save 15% off your order. Receive free shipping with any purchase of $25 or more. Give the gift of warmth to everyone you love or just yourself. Remember to go to heatholders.com. Use the code Sara, that's SARA. That's heatholders.com. Heat Holders, making life warmer. I am so grateful to have you on, Congressman Garcia. It's been a while since we've had a chance to talk. So thank you so much for being on the Sara Carter Show from Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me back, Sara. Appreciate it. It's good to see you again. And you're now you're going international with all your freedom fighting there. I love it.
Freedom fighting seems to be a very international thing right now. I keep telling people, I've said this to young people in California. I've said it to people when I've given speeches all across the country, even in New York just last week. Like, there is nothing cool about being the Borg. There is nothing cool about submitting to a communist ideology, and I think you're very well aware of this. You're a freedom fighter too, and a veteran of the armed forces. But the coolest thing in the world, the greatest thing, the most precious gift, and the most precious, I believe, inalienable right is our freedom as a human being. And we're seeing it here in Canada. Right. We've seen it sweep across the United States. Before we get into all of our stories, tell me a little bit about what that means to you, because you're a veteran, and I know how much it means to you. I know it because my husband, and for me, and our families.
Yeah, and the sacrifices that you and your husband have made are extremely invaluable, and that's what's made our country so great. And I grew up as someone who loved my nation. I grew up in a household where my stepfather was an LAPD officer and a Vietnam vet, and we just were raised with a love of country that I think is frankly missing right now in many of our neighborhoods and many of our communities. And we take things for granted right now. And I think it's getting a little bit better. I think people are starting to realize that it's okay to love your country. It's okay to take pride in our nation and love on the Constitution, and more importantly, to be able to do whatever is necessary to support that Constitution. And obviously, when you sign up to join the military, you take that oath to not only defend it, but also to be willing to give your life in support of the Constitution. And for me, Sarah, that hasn't changed. I would literally give my life in support of my country if I needed to, if it was something necessary to make sure that this great experiment continues forward in a meaningful way and in accordance with the Constitution.
Right.
I would do whatever it takes. And that's the level of service that I remain committed to today in this office.
Well, I love the way you put that. And I think if you were here with me in Canada, obviously you can see me, how exhausted I am. And I'm still have another whole workday ahead of me, meeting with the truckers, meeting with people that have literally taken a stand and said, enough is enough. We have rights. We are supposed to be a democracy where we're able to speak freely, where we don't have to feel threatened. It was really kind of an incredible moment for me, because I'd read so many stories about what was happening here in Canada. And, there were stories about, Trudeau saying some of these folks were racist, that there was issues with criminality, that one of the guys said his favorite was when Trudeau called them misogynist. He said, I guess we're all a bunch of misogynists, but there was a lot of women here, and I haven't seen any visible signs of misogyny. But I can tell you this, the people here look to the United States. They look to their brothers and sisters in the US. They said that they're so grateful that they came together. This was interesting. They said the only thing that brought them together, because Alberta and Ontario, and there's like a whole kind of, I guess, tribalism here in Canada, where one side is not as friendly to the other side, the French, Canadians, they said the only thing that brought them together was their hatred for Justin Trudeau. That they're going to vote him out. So I don't know why Justin Trudeau is tripling down on these kind of crazy extreme mandates, but he is. And the Canadian people have had enough. And I'm going to kind of leave it at that. You can comment on it, but I want to get to Afghanistan and some of the other great work that you've done.
Yeah, well, I think that it goes to the core of the problem, is that a lot of these leaders right now from the progressive left, they weren't always this way, but they've effectively bent the knee to this very woke agenda. And once you do that, you become hostage to that very far left agenda. And whether it's Pelosi or Biden or Trudeau, whatever the catalyst was, they are now beholden to that extremely far left flank, and they don't come off of it. They don't come off of the defunding the police movements. They don't come off of calling Americans racist, making it sound like our democracy is falling apart, when in reality, we still are that shining city on the hill that Reagan spoke of. And this country is still the country that everyone in the world wants to come to for a reason. And we need to protect that. But these leaders have just lost their way, and they continue to kowtow to an extremely far left flank, which is extremely dangerous for our nation. And that's the accountability that the voters are looking for. And they realize that it's bad for our country. It's dangerous with the rise in crime. We're seeing it now. So there's been an enlightenment by the voters, in my opinion. I think this is going to be a bad year for the far left, a bad couple of cycles for the far left. And Trudeau's at the tail end of that. He's clueless, obviously, but it unites the clans, right? It's just like Braveheart. Unite the clans and get rid of the tyranny of the majority, and we can get our country back. And that's what these folks in Canada are doing right now.
Exactly. Just looking back in history. I mean, it doesn't take a large jump, a large leap to realize that when you push people enough, I mean, these are the people that bring your food to the table. These are the people that drive your products to the grocery stores. These are the farmers, that with their own bare hands. And I met so many wonderful Canadian farmers, and I'm just like, how do you handle the cold? And they're like, look at my hands, and they're speaking to me in French. I've got thick hands. I'm out there tilling the soil. And, the hard workers, the women that work, the nurses, the police officers. And I think they've been put in a really precarious position. I have to do what the government says, and but they don't want to, they're out there with the people. And you could see that struggle, within the town, within the community here in Ottawa. You can feel that struggle. So it's just very interesting. You spoke about being blinded, how a lot of our government officials are blinded, and, and the fact too, that so many people are looking for hope and democracy.
and all over the world. Part of that was Afghanistan. You did some of the most amazing work. I was so grateful to be a part of your team there in a way, talking to Charles, talking to others on your team. And you, as you worked day and night, I don't even think you slept, to get people out of Afghanistan and get them into the United States, and to save our real true allies and American citizens and green card holders who gave so much for this country, for our country, in an effort to help their own. Talk a little bit about that and where you're at with that.
Yeah, I know it's very personal for you as well. And thank you for everything that you did to help us enable some of these networks. What we did was effectively contribute to what's been affectionately labeled as the digital Dunkirk. This was Americans coming together, Afghan partners, and several allies around the globe coming together. What was interesting was it was in a forum on apps, right, on secure apps to communicate with each other. On Signal and various forms of technology to communicate these networks. And what we were doing was basically doing what the State Department should have been doing, and that's getting Americans out of Afghanistan, getting our SIV partners who were promised exit visas coming out of Afghanistan after their service and commitment and their sacrifices. Many of them were killed in supporting our efforts in Afghanistan, our collective efforts. And so over the course of the last, call it 5 months or so, my office has been able to get out about 115 American and SIV partners. And to your point about Charles Navarro, who's my district director, just a fantastic American, a Navy reservist and a patriot himself. And it was one of those things, he literally did not sleep. He was running an operations center out of our office and his home for several months. And the things that he had to see, the things that we had to listen to and bear witness to while Afghanistan was falling apart were absolutely appalling and shocking. And, but the reality is that it had to be done. We decided to take on that risk and take on that mission because the State Department wasn't. And where we were not successful in getting people out, it was usually because we were actually trying to work with the State Department where we would give them data to move people around. And then that data would get compromised, and then our folks would get stopped at the Taliban checkpoints and end up being returned. Or we would tell them, hey, go back, it's too dangerous, everything's been compromised. It was usually because the State Department was involved. And that's the story that's not getting told. This Allied Airlift 21 and the large groups that came together, a nonprofit organization, major donors to bring money into this. This was all private money. This wasn't government money. And it's amazing to me that we still have over 100 Americans there. The average American has forgotten about the debacle. If you ask them, it's not in their top 5 key careabouts anymore. That's something we've got to make sure we don't let Americans forget.
Right.
But it's a shame that this government's still not spending money on helping getting Americans out. This is all private money. And this is where they need the help. They need the funding help. As well as the infrastructure and organizational help now at this point. But the walls are closing in on us, and our options are becoming fewer as time goes on. But we did as much as we could. We're proud of the work, and thank you, Sara, for everything you did as well in that instrumental part of that effort, obviously.
Well, I felt it was a part of what we all needed to do. Look, we all have connections with that region of the world. Some of those memories are very hard to remember. Some of them, we've lost some great Americans there, great friends of ours that will forever be remembered and missed in our hearts. Their blood shed on Afghanistan soil for Americans. And I think it was really hard for me, for my husband, for you, for veterans who served in that region, for Charles, for others, to kind of see the end of that the way it ended, more the way it ended. And the loss of life of our 13 Marines. So this is what gives me hope, is that we have congressional members like you, Congressman Garcia, who do go above and beyond what you are called to do to ensure, because you have a good heart, because you have good moral ground to get things done, to ensure that you don't leave people behind. Just for everyone out there who's listening, this is the kind of person that would not leave you behind. They would find a way. I saw it with my own eyes. I watched the congressman and his team just work day and night, not, even for SIVs who didn't have all their paperwork yet completed, who had done everything that was asked of our government. And so we have children now. I want you to think about this. And it was really interesting because I was talking to I remember a very elderly Jewish woman about this, and about all the children, that came to America before the Holocaust and even during the Holocaust. And, all the families that existed because of that, because of those that survived, and in any war, right? In any war, when there's it, even if it was, you say, oh, we only got 150 out. Oh, we only got 27 out. Oh, we only got all of those people now have a chance to go on. Their families have a chance to grow, and their children now live in freedom. Thank God for that. I don't know how long with Biden. Right. With Biden, right? Biden's on the edge right now. I mean, we've got China and Russia rearing up their ugly heads. How do you feel about that? I mean, they've literally come out and said, hey, guess what? We're going to unify now against the West. And what are you going to do about it?
It's important for Americans to realize this didn't happen overnight, right? This didn't happen just in the last year. There's been a lot of green lights lit in the last year because of the lack of internal fortitude coming out of this White House. And frankly, the Afghanistan experience knocked us down a few rungs in terms of, our superiority over other nations and not being necessarily a premier superpower like we were a year ago. But this is something that if you haven't been paying attention, Russia and China are coordinating with each other. China's doctrine is one that's anchored to a vision of 2049, where they are the only superpower, where they have effectively dominated not just the globe, but the United States. And if they had their way, if Chairman Xi had his way, by the way, he's not a president. This is a communist regime, and he's the chairman of the party. If Chairman Xi had his way, there would be no United States of America. And so what's going on right now in the Ukraine is them effectively probing to see what the American and NATO response will be if they invade or if they build up troops on the border. They're trying to see what the reaction is, whether or not there's a commitment to deploy troops, to move weapons, to actually employ sanctions against Russia if they do invade the border. And this is data collection, okay? And I think it's inevitable. I think Russia ultimately will invade the Ukraine. I think ultimately it's going to be a Crimea scenario from 2012 to 2014 that we saw, and that's what happens. For the last 30 years, the Ukraine and the NATO allies have failed to create a truly strategic partnership among democracies that would effectively be a meaningful deterrent against Russia invading the Ukraine. They haven't joined NATO. They haven't we haven't brought them into the fold and brought them under our wing as strongly as we should have. And we've known that this is a problem, and this is the manifestation of a lack of strategic partnerships. But the green light was Biden, right? Biden basically telling Putin that you can slight incursions are fine. We'll see what we do there. You can give us cyber attacks. Just stay away from these 14 industries. We'll support your Nord Stream 2 oil pipeline. So he's conceded these very large concessions and given a lot of ground up just in the last year. And Putin knows that Biden has no backbone. But the reality is that Russia is that sort of high, slow snowball, right? When you get in a snowball fight, there's that tactic of throwing that high, slow snowball. And while everyone's looking at that snowball up in the air, moving very slowly, the real threat is that line drive snowball that hits you right between the eyes, right? China is that line drive. And we've got to make sure that we're not getting distracted by what's going on in the Ukraine. At this point, we've got to try to do everything we can from a non-kinetic perspective without employing troops into the Ukraine to deter Russia. But we can't forget that massive bear to the west of us called China that is building intercontinental ballistic missiles at a rate that we've never seen. They're building hypersonic weapons, cyber techniques, both offensive and defensive.
Space technology through the roof. Space technology through the roof. Town space. And that should be interesting enough for you. I mean, that is a real national security issue.
Right, and we're lagging in several of these domains, right? Obviously, we've seen with the virus that they have a biological development effort that can bring us to our knees. They may not have even done it on purpose. If they, whether they did it on purpose or inadvertently, it still brought the globe to its knees economically and killed millions of people. But they can do that in earnest. They can have cyber attacks in earnest. They can have kinetic attacks, intercontinental missiles, space. And so all of these domains that, 10 years ago, we would have had a significant advantage in, we now have parity, and in some we're lagging. So we've got to pay attention to that. We've got to be able to fund our military. We've got to be able to invest in these higher end technologies and keep up with China. And we've been fighting a 20-year global war on terror, 22 years now, and we've been investing in these low intensity conflict technologies because it was needed. But what we haven't been investing in is the higher end technology. And China is, when you look at what's happening in Russia and the Ukraine is roughly 30% the size of Russia in terms of size as well as population. The United States is roughly 24% the size of China in terms of population and capacity, right? So we're not invulnerable to China today, and we certainly won't be in 10 years if we don't start catching up and making these investments. So that is the real threat.
I think what you're saying is actually a great warning to everyone who underestimates what could potentially happen. I think we all feel so comfortable I think now we've woken up for the most part. I think Americans have over the last 2 years dealing with COVID, dealing with a virus that did emanate from China, that has held our world hostage. I'm here in Canada. I may be held hostage today. I have to get another PCR test, just to get back to the United States. It's changed our lives, turned everything upside down. And still we have, I think, for the most part, lawmakers that are not taking this seriously enough, like you are. They're, sitting back on their laurels. They're not focused on what needs to be done. And particularly when you bring up China, and right now Russia with Ukraine, I do think they tested us. I think when the Biden administration came in and gave, Nord Stream 2 and said to the Russians, we're basically giving you back what you've always wanted, which was to be the leader in energy in the world. I mean, we basically took America back. Instead of making America first, we're making America last. Yep. And they just said, hey, look, we're going to see what we can do. And now, honestly, I don't know how we're going to avoid what could potentially happen in the next 2 years, because they've really put us in a precarious position. What do we do if Russia goes in and takes Ukraine? Do we just do nothing because we've been put in this position by the Biden administration? I think it's a very real and very scary thought.
Yeah, and it starts with reversing this trend towards the extremely far left woke agenda, to be honest. I mean, when you've got your Department of Defense talking about diversity and inclusion on their social media, when
transgender bathrooms, transgender issues, when you have an enemy at the gates inside our country, because I believe there's irregular warfare in the United States being conducted by the Chinese government and the Russians. You can't tell me no. I mean, and I'm going to go into the marijuana grows with you because of the issue of fentanyl. China knows how much fentanyl is being exported to Mexico. China knows these fentanyl precursor chemicals are being manufactured by the Mexican drug cartels. They're mixing it up there and then shipping the fentanyl into the United States. It's killing our children. It's killing our people. It's poisoning our nation. And it's counterfeit pills too. It's not just about addicts. It's about counterfeit pills that are literally killing our people. I believe that's irregular warfare.
It is. And when you look at the other techniques they're using, you've got corporations in the United States completely entangled in China and other, equities that are not in our interest. In many ways, we've lost the cultural war that's already been going on for the last 20 years. Biden back in 2011 basically made a statement that he welcomes competition from China. It's good. It's good for all of us. Psaki just in a couple of months ago echoed that sentiment. So he hasn't changed. In 11 years, he hasn't realized that welcoming competition from China is actually a very dangerous thing for the United States. It's an existential threat. And what he's trained people and as well as the Obama administration before him to do is to tolerate and try to cooperate and appease China rather than build the natural defenses against them. You have to assume that with a threat this big, that they will attack at some point. And if they don't, that's great, but at least you're ready, right? Right now, we're not building the defenses. We're not building the offenses capable of making sure that we don't have effectively a Russia annexation of the Ukraine happening in Taiwan by China. We need to realize that this is the existential threat, and anything else is noise behind it. And our border is one way that they're infiltrating us and influencing this cultural war and diluting our strength. And it's giving hope to the bad guys is what it ultimately is. And that's effectively what this president has done for the last year. He's given hope to the bad guys, whether it's Russia, Afghanistan, the Taliban, Iran with this nuclear deal he's trying to get back into that they don't even want themselves, China, the southern border, the cartels, whatever it is, it's like he's choosing to support the bad guys instead of the good guys.
Well, I know, exactly. I mean, China literally snuffed out democracy in Hong Kong, but, Democrats are blaming Republican-led states, are saying they're putting democracy in peril by requiring voter ID and other measures, to eliminate fraud. I mean, do you think Americans are believing this kind of rhetoric of the left anymore?
No, I don't think people are falling for it anymore. I think they're realizing they got hoodwinked with all of this messaging. First of all, not everyone believed it to begin with. But when you start seeing inflation hit 7.5%, 40-year highs, and you start seeing crime go up the way it is, people start valuing security, whether it's national security, border security, neighborhood security, or economic security. They start valuing that over a party allegiance. And they're starting to realize that the people that they voted for because they were Democrats and they thought they were good people are actually incompetent, and they're driving our nation into the ground.
Well, before I let you go, I've got to ask you. I know I've kept you on longer than I even said I would, but it's just because I can talk to you forever because you have such a plethora of knowledge of what's going on in the world. One of the things that was very close to home for you, though, were these illegal marijuana grows. And I was so grateful to be able to break that story on Fox News with you on Sean Hannity's show. What's been going on? We've exposed those illegal marijuana grows in the District of California, but what's happening right now? Is there good news on that front? I know you've been working very closely with the sheriff. And for everybody out there that doesn't know what was happening here, these were illegal marijuana grows that were taking over people's private land. They were using this money, correct me if I'm wrong, Congressman, for their illegal, illicit activities. They even had armed gunmen on these groves, people that were enslaved working on some of these groves. It was really an incredible story. I mean, almost no one believed me when I first told them until they saw it for themselves.
Yeah, it was one of those things you couldn't believe in until you saw it firsthand. So thank you and Sean and the team there for putting a bright light on it for us. It's been a success story. We're not done yet. As you know, the raids in June, we knocked out about 30% of literally thousands of these grows, that are 10 acres and above. Well, we seized $1.2 billion worth of illegal marijuana, several dozen handguns, made several dozen arrests. These are indentured servants, mostly illegal immigrants working as slaves in these fields. They found dead bodies. They found dead animals. Very ugly. They're stealing our water, stealing our land. None of it's being taxed. It's cannabis is legal in California, but the legal business is actually going out of business because of all these illegal grows. So since then, we've gotten a significant amount of funding. The LA County Board of Supervisors did get Villanueva a big tranche of funding to go fight this problem. We were able to get the sheriffs a significant 7-figure grant from the federal government to do it as well. So they're tackling it. They're committed to it. They haven't forgot it. It's on the front of their radar right now, and they're doing a great job, especially with this cold season, knocking these things down before the springtime. Where we're running into headwinds is in LA. They're still defunding the police, right? In LA, the Board of Supervisors is not allowing Villanueva to hire new sheriffs, and they just now yesterday voted to get rid of several thousand LA County employees, to include sheriffs. I think something like 3,000 or 4,000 sheriffs, because they didn't get the vaccine. And we're already short on law enforcement in LA. And we're now firing good cops because they didn't want to get the vaccine, which is absolutely insane. It is the tyranny of the very far left still existing here. And that's going to be our biggest challenge right now in fighting all crime, not just the illegal marijuana grows.
Well, I want you to know that you are not alone, Congressman. I'm here in Canada, and I met a wonderful couple last night who said their restaurant was seized by the government because they weren't requiring vaccine proof when people would come in to eat. So the government just walked in. They told me they just walked in, pushed them out, took their stuff, bolted the restaurant down, bolted the windows, and said, "You no longer have a restaurant." Wow. I couldn't believe it. There are people in the streets that have not worked in months that have given up all their pay because they said, "Look, it's my body. If you have the vaccine, that's wonderful. You're protected. I really don't want to do this, or I don't want to do it because I have a heart condition and I'm worried," whatever it is. They just made a decision.
Right.
It wasn't the decision that I made, but they made their own decision. And, right. I believe in respecting people's decisions, especially when it comes to this. I'm going by the science, folks. I'm going by the science. So, it's a really tough situation. I think America, like you said, we need to stand up. We need to keep freedom at the center of everything that we do, and liberty, right? I mean, that's what keeps our nation great. And it does frighten me, the direction we're taking. And I give you, oh my gosh, so much credit. Unbelievable. California, you are fighting the good fight. You're like the Lone Ranger, you and Villanueva, sheriffs out there on the, hill, trying to fight this board of supervisors that certainly would rather probably give a crack pipe to the illegal growers than actually stop this.
Yep. No, that's fair. And, I think at a very macro level around the globe, Canada and Australia were on the same tier as the United States in terms of liberty and freedom a few months ago, right? And we've seen what's happened in those two countries. The story that you told us happened hundreds of times in Australia as well. And that we can't forget that as Americans, we feel like we're preordained to live this American dream, and that the Constitution will always be what it is, and we're guaranteed rights. But it takes the efforts of good leaders and good citizens to make sure that those rights are actually implemented correctly. And in the last 2 years, we have encroached upon our own Constitution under this guise of public safety, when in reality it's for a political agenda. And we've got to get back to the true intent of the Constitution and get back to what this country was designed to do, which is to provide for individual liberties and freedom, and give us the power, that we the people the power, not the politicians and the government. And we will. It's a very manual process, and we've got to make sure that we're working it. This isn't preordained. But what Reagan said, we're never more than one generation away from losing our beautiful country, and we need people to pay attention and vote for it. If you're not the person in the arena, then vote for the right people and support those who are willing to do the right thing.
Congressman Mike Garcia, he is somebody that really is a true patriot. He is a fighter. He is what every lawmaker should be. I can't wait to have him back on the show again. You know who else is a great patriot? It's Dr. Mike Fulgens. He's America's gold expert, and he's the 2021 Numismatic Dealer of the Year. He is predicting silver prices will continue to rise as inflation, because we've seen that, guys, inflation is out of control, and industrial use follow their upward trends. That's why his company, Universal Coin and Bullion, is offering you a new 2022 genuine 1-ounce silver American Eagle coin at just $28 with free shipping directly to you. Everyone should own a percentage of precious metals. So call Universal Coin and Bullion today at 1-800-UCB-GOLD. Be sure to mention me by name when you call. That's 1-800-UCB-GOLD. Mention me by name to get a tangible asset you can hold in your hand. Call Universal Coin and Bullion at 1-800-UCB-GOLD, and their expert team of representatives will help you order your $28 American Silver Eagle coin today at 1-800-UCB-GOLD. Don't forget to tell them Sara sent you. All right, we've got Ontario Premier Doug Ford. You know where I was at. I was in Ottawa, Canada. I cannot believe this guy, Doug Ford. This is unbelievable to me. I was out there with the truckers. They were amazing people. They were amazing folks. Hard workers. I met this old farmer, and he was a French-Canadian farmer, just the sweetest man, big, strong as an ox, had these huge hands, right, that were all calloused from working so hard. And he said, I'm coming here to support the truckers who deliver the food. We're the people that grow the food. We're the people that deliver the food. Don't we have a voice? Don't we have a right to speak up? That's what he was saying. I want you to hear how Doug Ford is threatening the convoy members with huge fines and 1 year in prison. Folks, we're living in a completely different world. And if you thought there was democracy in Canada, think again. Listen to this.
Today, I'm using my authority as Premier of Ontario to declare a state of emergency in our province. And I will convene Cabinet to use legal authorities to urgently enact orders that will make crystal clear it is illegal and punishable to block and impede the movement of goods, people, and services along critical infrastructure. This will include protecting international border crossings, 400 series highways, airports, ports, bridges, and railways. It will also include protecting the safe and essential movement of ambulatory and medical services, public transit, municipal and provincial roadways, as well as pedestrian walkways. Fines for noncompliance will be severe, with a maximum penalty of $100,000 and up to a year imprisonment. We will also provide additional authority to consider taking away the personal and commercial licenses of anyone who doesn't comply with these orders.
Unbelievable. So basically taking away their right to a voice. Instead of sitting down and talking with these truckers, instead of listening to them, because these mandates are absolutely insane. That's why they're dropping them everywhere, because they're seeing the writing on the wall, right? The writing on the wall. People are not putting up with this anymore. We are seeing people rise up in Australia. We're seeing people in Vienna. We're seeing people all across our country. And now Doug Ford sits there. And by the way, it was really funny. Somebody sent me a picture of Doug Ford talking about taking care of himself with coronavirus, like some kind of t-shirt he was wearing. And he's outside. He's a big guy. He's overweight, really overweight. And he's like grilling some food and talking. And his shirt made this statement about keeping your social distancing and staying healthy. And everybody's like, this is the dude that's telling us. He's the one with the underlying condition. And he's grilling up some Cheetos and some bacon and a baby back rib. I don't even know what's going on. But this is the guy. And he's threatening these truckers. There is something to be said for standing up and speaking out. I'm glad he did this because it exposes what dirtbags all of these people are. I want you to listen right now to Justin Trudeau. By the way, there's this whole rumor, and it's a rumor, guys. I'm not saying it's true, but you got to look at it. Circulating on the internet that Trudeau is really the illegitimate child of Fidel Castro. There's a whole backstory to this, where his mom, who's a journalist, she's gorgeous, was in Cuba doing interviews with Fidel. But if you look at their pictures side by side, you're going to have a lot of fun with it. They look a lot alike. And it doesn't surprise me. Listen to this.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations. I want to be very clear. The scope of these measures will be time-limited, geographically targeted, as well as reasonable and proportionate to the threats they are meant to address. The Emergencies Act will be used to strengthen and support law enforcement agencies at all levels across the country. This is about keeping Canadians safe, protecting people's jobs, and restoring confidence in our institutions. We're entering the third week of illegal blockades that have been disrupting the lives of too many Canadians. Here in our capital city, families and small businesses have been enduring illegal obstruction of their neighborhoods, occupying streets, harassing people, breaking the law. This is not a peaceful protest.
This is a peaceful protest. He's lying. He's lying. You want me to tell you what's obstructing businesses in Canada, in Ottawa? Is the fact that people have to show their vaccine card on you have to have your QR code on your phone and your driver's license or passport. You have to walk around with your vaccine passports on you at all times. People don't even want to go out anymore. The mandates are overly restrictive. People are unhappy, they're frustrated, and they're just not going to take it anymore. So I was so grateful to be out there with all those Canadians who were saying, you know what? We're not going to listen to this. We're all walking around. Oh, arrest us for hugging each other. Arrest us. Hug a trucker. Arrest us. We are making a choice that we want to be human again, that you are not in control of us, that you work for us. You shouldn't be a dictator. I'm not saying he's Fidel Castro's son, but gosh, he sure does act like him with a French accent and younger, but he acts like him. He should be ashamed of himself. And you know what? Saying that these are not peaceful protests, let me tell you how peaceful this is. And I don't know if there have been like a couple of outliers there doing something crazy, but overall, I felt safe no matter what time of the night I was walking through these trucks. They left lanes open, so there was no obstruction of any of the streets. So even if they took like 1 or 2 lanes, there's always a third lane open for cars to go back and forth, or 2 lanes open for cars to go back and forth, and 1 lane taken by the trucks. So they left it open. What Trudeau doesn't want is to see those trucks in his hometown. That's where he was born, Ottawa. He was born in Ottawa. And he's like French Canadian and Scottish descent and maybe Cuban. I don't know. I'm half Cuban. I'm not ashamed. Trudeau maybe should go to 23andMe and just take a test, or, Ancestry.com. It's available now for everyone. You could find out exactly who your father is. And I've already taken it, so I know who mine is. But don't act like a tyrant. Don't act like a tyrant if you don't want people comparing you to a tyrant. These are farmers. These are hardworking men and women like you and I. Right? Not like Trudeau, like you and I, like you all listening to me right now. These are hardworking people. Like my mom and dad, who worked with their hands and worked in factories or delivered our food. They're the people I respect. I want to hear their voices. That's why I go there. I want to hear their voices. I want to know what is really happening, because guess what, folks? I'm not going to be an easy target. I'm not going to be one of those journalists that, work for the New York Times getting fed bull crap from the government. And I'm not saying every time you get information from the government, it's not real. But I am not going to be that person. I want to be on the ground, seeing it for myself with my own eyes. Boots on the ground. That is the only way you get the truth. That's it. That is why I went to Canada. And that is why I'm going to insist that Justin Trudeau take a 23andMe test, because he's acting like a tyrant. I cannot believe this is happening to Canada. Canadians, you are my brother and sisters. We will stand by you. We will stand by your protest to have control of your own body and your own lives. And by the way, folks, do you know that more than 80% of all those truckers have been vaccinated? The ones that are out there are just standing up for the people that don't want to take it and don't want to be wearing masks all day. Canada is like out of control. Again, thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. Thank you, Congressman Mike Garcia, for being on this show. It's been great having you. I want to bring you back on. And for all of you out there, remember, leave your reviews. Hit me up on Twitter. Hit me up on Instagram. Let me know what stories mean the most to you, and we are going to get them out there for you. You go to SaraACarter.com. That's SaraACarter.com. Download the podcast there. That's very important. I would love for you to download the podcast. That helps us grow. That helps us keep advertisement and reach more and more people. We're a family. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we're going to make changes. That's why Durham released his report, because everybody in America was pushing for this. John Solomon and I and every other reporter who jumped on that bandwagon to tell the truth. That is why something is getting done. We can only get things done if we speak up and speak out. And that's why Doug Ford barbecuing his big ribs over there in Canada, and Justin, maybe Castro Trudeau, is all up in arms, all upset, pulling their hair out, and Biden, because people are standing up and speaking out. Thanks again for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. Follow me at Sara Carter DC on Twitter. Go to my Instagram. Go to my website. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless Canada. And God bless the great state of Texas. See you soon.
Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Weber, the CEO of the Association for Mature American Citizens. It's also known as AMAC. The most important question, I think, for so many people out there is, how much does AMAC membership cost? What does it cost the regular consumer?
Yeah, so for $16 a year, okay, or less, you can join at a 1, 3, or 5 year membership. You get a couple of things. You get the benefits. You get a great subscription to a magazine. So for $16, you're going to receive a bi-monthly magazine. but your voice is now going to be heard in Washington. We take our marching orders from you. If you stand for faith, family, freedom, if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in the greatness of America, if you believe in individual freedoms and everything you just said, Sara, $16 is not a lot of money to join the 2.3 million members that are really fighting hard to ensure that America remains the best country in the world.
Rebecca, thanks so much for being with me today. I'm honored to have you and AMAC as a sponsor for the Sara Carter Show. For more information, folks, visit amac.us/Carter.